You're sitting there, finally starting to move on, and then your phone buzzes. It's that person from weeks ago asking how your Tuesday is going. It feels nice to be remembered, right? But then the silence returns for days.
Exactly. And that's the classic breadcrumbing. It's fascinating because it's not just about being flaky. It's a specific communication rhythm. Research shows that 3 out of 10 Americans have used dating apps, and in that world of endless options, breadcrumbing has become this low-effort way to keep someone on the hook without ever building anything real.
It's like a slot machine for our emotions. You get just enough of a dopamine hit to stay invested, even though there's no actual commitment.
Right. And today, we're decoding why this happens. We're moving past the confusion to see this sporadic attention for what it really is, a desire for control over a desire for connection.
I love that. Before we get into the psychology, make sure to follow us at Translation Table across social media and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode.
Let's explore how this cycle of intermittent reinforcement actually works on our brains.
So, Miles, we just touched on that dopamine hit, the slot machine effect. But I really want to pull back the curtain on the actual mechanics of why it feels so addictive. Because honestly, when I'm in it, I don't feel like I'm at a casino. I feel like I'm in love, or at least on the verge of something big. Why does our brain trick us like that?
It's all about this schedule of the reward, Nia. In psychology, there's this concept called intermittent reinforcement. It's basically a learning pattern where the reward, in this case, a text or a miss you, happens sometimes but never on a predictable schedule. If someone texted you every morning at 9 a.m., your brain would eventually habituate to it. It becomes a nice, calm routine. But when that text comes at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, then nothing for 10 days, and then a heart emoji at midnight on a Friday, your brain goes into overdrive.
Right, because you never know when the next win is coming. It's that uncertainty that keeps you glued to the screen. I've read that unpredictable rewards actually teach us to chase rather than relax. It's like we're trained to stay emotionally on call.
Exactly. Predictable rewards allow your nervous system to settle. You know the person is there, so you don't have to obsess. But with breadcrumbing, the uncertainty makes you check your phone more frequently. You start decoding the tone of a single hey. You replay the last conversation in your head looking for clues. That mental loop, that constant preoccupation, starts to feel like chemistry or passion, but it's actually just your brain trying to solve a puzzle.
It's a crazy-making cycle, really. I mean, think about the energy we spend. It's not just the 5 seconds it takes to read the text. It's the hours of mental labor afterwards. We're essentially doing the work of 2 people to keep the connection alive in our own heads. And the source materials mention that this can actually intensify attraction. One study on uncertainty in attraction found that not knowing how much someone likes you can actually make you like them more and think about them more often.
It's a literal trap. And what's wild is that during those quiet gaps, those periods of silence, your mind isn't just waiting, it's editing. You start building a narrative. You tell yourself, they must be so busy at work. Or maybe they're just scared of how much they like me. You fill the silence with the best case scenario.
And then, just when you're about to give up, just when you've had enough and you're ready to delete the number, they pop back in. It's almost like they have a sensor for when you're pulling away.
Well, in many cases they do. Or rather, they're monitoring your engagement. If they see you stop liking their posts or you stop responding as fast, they throw out another crumb to reset the clock. It's a way of testing if they still have access to your attention. It's not about wanting to see you, it's about wanting to know they could see you if they felt like it.
That realization is so heavy. It shifts the whole thing from maybe they're just bad at texting to they're intentionally managing my interest level. It's about maintaining a backup option. The sources call it keeping you on the emotional shelf.
And it thrives in our modern dating culture where options feel infinite. If you have 50 matches on an app, breadcrumbing becomes a rational strategy for a low-investment person. They can keep 10 different people warm with about 5 minutes of texting a day. It's the commodification of connection, maximizing your market opportunities while minimizing your actual emotional cost.
You mentioned that phrase, keeping you on the emotional shelf, and it really sticks with me because it feels so clinical, like we're just a resource to be managed. If we're looking at breadcrumbing as a desire for control rather than connection, how does that play out in the actual messages they send?
It's the difference between structural availability and emotional availability. A breadcrumber will give you tiny bursts of emotional intensity, telling you they miss you or sharing a deep secret. But they have zero structural availability. They won't commit to a Tuesday at 7 p.m. They won't follow through on the "we should hang out soon" line.
Right. The "we should hang out soon" is the ultimate breadcrumb. It sounds like a plan, but it's actually a placeholder. It puts the ball in your court to supply the structure. But then when you say, "Great, how about Thursday?" they suddenly get vague or disappear again.
Because the goal wasn't the date. The goal was the hit of validation they got when you said yes. They want to know you're still interested. Once they have that confirmation, their ego tank is full, and they don't actually need to do the work of going on a date. In fact, a date requires effort, money, and vulnerability. A text is free.
It's so interesting how we interpret that "I miss you" text as a sign of depth. But if you look at it through the lens of control, "I miss you" actually translates to "I miss the attention you give me." It's a reset button. If they feel you drifting, that emotional language pulls you back in without them having to change their behavior.
Exactly. And there are these specific thought traps that keep us waiting. One of the big ones is confirmation bias. We notice the 3 sweet texts they sent, and we completely minimize the 3 weeks of silence. We remember the one great date we had 2 months ago, and we treat it as the real version of them, while the current inconsistency is just a phase.
Oh, I've definitely been there. You become a narrative editor. You're constantly looking for evidence to support the story that this is going somewhere. And then there's the optimism bias, the belief that we'll be the one to change them, or that our situation is the exception to the rule. We start vetting on a future version of them that doesn't actually exist yet.
And don't forget the sunk cost fallacy. Once you've invested 3 months of your time, your vulnerability, and your late-night thoughts into someone, walking away feels like losing that investment. So you stay, hoping that if you just put in a little more effort, you'll finally get the payoff.
But the payoff is designed to stay out of reach. That's the control aspect. If they actually committed, they'd lose the power of the chase. They'd have to be accountable. By keeping it in this gray zone, they get all the benefits of your attention with none of the responsibility. They're the ones holding the lever to the slot machine.
It's a power imbalance disguised as a casual connection. And for the person on the receiving end, it can lead to rejection sensitivity. You start expecting rejection, so you become even more hypervigilant to every tiny signal. You're essentially training your nervous system to stay in a state of high alert anxiety.
I want to talk about why some of us are more susceptible to this than others. Because I know people who would get one YED text at 11 p.m. and just delete the number immediately. But for others, it's like catnip. Is this where attachment theory comes in?
Absolutely. If you have an anxious attachment style, breadcrumbing is your worst nightmare and your biggest obsession all at once. Your system is wired to crave reassurance. When someone pulls away, your attachment alarm goes off. You feel an urgent need to close the gap. So when that person finally sends a crumb, the relief you feel is so intense that it actually reinforces the bond.
It's like being parched in a desert and someone gives you a teaspoon of water. It doesn't hydrate you, but it makes you obsessed with the person holding the spoon.
That's a perfect analogy. And for someone with an avoidant attachment style, breadcrumbing might actually feel safe in a distorted way. They get to have a connection that stays at a distance. They can dip their toes in the water with a flirty text and then retreat before it gets too real. It allows them to maintain their independence while still getting their ego needs met.
So you get this attachment dance where one person is chasing crumbs and the other is dropping them to keep the distance exactly where they want it. It's a cycle that can last for months or even years without ever moving forward.
And we have to look at the role of emotional unavailability here. Sometimes we find unavailable people intriguing because they feel like a problem to solve. Mystery gets mistaken for depth. We think, if I can just be patient enough or understanding enough, they'll finally open up. But consistency is actually what defines depth in a relationship. Respect and clear communication are the real markers of emotional maturity.
Right. And the breadcrumber often uses these scripts to stay in that safe zone. I'm just so busy, or I'm bad at texting. Those are such classic excuses. And while they might be true in a literal sense, they're often used as a permanent shield against accountability. If someone is bad at texting, but they really want to see you, they'll call or they'll make a plan.
Consistency always shows up somewhere if the interest is genuine. If the effort only flows in one direction, yours, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a situationship fueled by breadcrumbs.
And then there's benching. That's another term I saw in the sources. It's basically when you're being kept as a backup while they pursue other primary interests. They message you just enough to keep you on the bench so that if their other plans fall through, you're still there, ready to go.
It's a ruthless calculus of relational resources. In a world where dating apps make everyone feel replaceable, some people treat their roster like a portfolio. They're diversifying their attention. It's not about you as a human being. It's about you as a unit of validation that can be called upon when their ego needs a boost.
That is such a cold way to look at it, but it's so necessary for our listeners to hear. Because when you're in the middle of it, you feel like you're the only one. You feel special when they text you. But the reality is, they might be sending that same thinking of you text to 5 other people at the same time.
We've talked about texts, but breadcrumbing has moved way beyond the inbox. Now we have orbiting. This is when someone stops talking to you. Maybe they even ghosted you, but they're still watching every single one of your Instagram stories. They're liking your posts. They're staying visible in your digital periphery.
Orbiting is the worst. It's like they're haunting you. It keeps them in your head without them actually interacting with you. You see their little bubble at the top of your story viewers and you think, wait, if they're watching my life, they must still care, right?
And that's exactly the trap. It's engagement without effort. Watching a story takes half a second of passive attention. It's not a sign of care. It's surveillance. They're keeping tabs on you. Maybe they're checking if you're dating someone else, or they just want to stay top of mind so they can breadcrumb you again 3 months from now when they're bored.
It creates this emotional friction. You're trying to move on, but their digital ghost is everywhere. And social media platforms are literally designed to facilitate this. The active now status, the read receipts, the typing indicator, they all turn communication into a spectator sport.
It turns your phone into a surveillance device. You start managing your own digital presence to avoid triggering them, or conversely, to try and get their attention. You post a thirst trap just to see if they'll view it. Now you're the one performing for their passive attention. The breadcrumber has successfully exerted control over your behavior without even sending a message.
It's a reinforcement machine. These apps are built on the same variable reward principles we talked about with slot machines. Sometimes you get a like, sometimes you don't. Sometimes they watch your story, sometimes they don't. It keeps you checking, keeps you scrolling, and keeps you hooked into their orbit.
And we have to talk about streak culture too. Some people will send a meaningless emoji every day just to keep a streak alive on an app. It looks like consistency, but it's actually just a thin habit. There's no substance, no conversation, no plan. It's the bare minimum masquerading as commitment.
The bare minimum is such a trap. When you've been starved of attention, a good morning text feels like a grand romantic gesture. You start measuring progress against the worst moments of silence, rather than against what a healthy, consistent relationship actually looks like.
It's the contrast effect. If you haven't eaten in 3 days, a dry cracker tastes like a 5-course meal. Breadcrumbers rely on that. They wait until you're just about to check out, and then they drop a tiny crumb of warmth. Because they know that in your state of emotional hunger, that crumb will feel like a feast.
It's so manipulative when you lay it out like that. But it's also a socioeconomic thing, isn't it? Our attention economy treats our focus as a currency. By breadcrumbing, they're essentially trying to buy your attention for the lowest possible price.
Exactly. It's a neoliberal approach to intimacy. Why spend the high cost of commitment, the time, the emotional labor, the exclusivity, when you can buy the same hit of validation with a low-cost text? It's about maximizing ego profit while minimizing relational investment.
I want to dive into the "I've been so busy" excuse because I think it's the most common shield people use. We've all been busy. Life happens. Work gets crazy. But how do we distinguish between a genuine life crisis and convenience-only texting?
The key is repair. A genuinely busy person might go quiet for a few days, but when they resurface, they acknowledge the gap. They say,
I'm so sorry I disappeared. Work was a nightmare. I've missed you. Can we catch up on Thursday? They offer a solution. They repair the connection.
Right. They don't just pop back in with a wide, as if 3 weeks of silence didn't happen. The breadcrumber ignores the gap because acknowledging it would require accountability. They want to pick up exactly where they left off, with you being available and interested, without having to explain their absence.
Exactly. And the busy excuse usually lacks specificity. If someone is truly swamped, they can usually tell you why and when it will end. I have a project due on the 15th. I'll be much more free after that. A breadcrumber is permanently busy. It's a chronic state that never resolves into a plan.
It's also about the selective availability. They're too busy to go to dinner on a Tuesday, but they're not too busy to send a flirty text at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday. Or they're bad at texting you, but you see them posting on social media all day. That's a major red flag. If they have the energy to perform for their followers, they have the energy to send a real message to someone they care about.
It's about where you rank in their attention hierarchy. We all check our phones dozens, sometimes hundreds of times a day. If someone is online but isn't responding to your direct question, they're making a choice. They're choosing to keep you in the waiting room while they engage with other things.
That waiting room feeling is so damaging to self-esteem. You start wondering, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not worth a 10-second reply? But it's not about your worth. It's about their desire for control. By making you wait, they're the ones in charge of the pace. They're the ones holding the power.
And some people breadcrumb out of conflict avoidance. They don't want to be the bad guy who breaks things off. They're scared of the big talk. So they just fade out and then fade back in, hoping that if they keep it vague enough, they'll never have to have a real conversation about where things stand.
It's a slow ghosting. But because they never fully disappear, you can't get closure. You're stuck in this liminal space of maybe. And maybe is the most exhausting word in the dating dictionary.
It really is. Maybe allows you to keep editing the story. It keeps the hope alive. And as long as that hope is alive, the breadcrumber still has a tether to you. They still have an option.
Let's talk about some of the darker patterns. I was reading about weaponized vulnerability. This is when someone only shares something deep or painful right when you're trying to set a boundary or ask for clarity. It's like they use their trauma as a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Oh, that's a classic control tactic. It's a deflection. You say, "Hey, I'm feeling really anxious about our communication." And they respond with, "I'm just going through so much right now. My childhood was really tough. I find it so hard to trust people." Now, suddenly, the conversation isn't about their behavior. It's about your lack of empathy for their pain.
It makes you feel like a monster for having needs. You end up apologizing to them for bringing up your feelings. It's a complete reversal of the power dynamic. They use honesty or vulnerability not to build closeness, but to shut down accountability.
And then there's the guilt deployment, the "after everything I've done for you," or the "I guess I'm just not good enough." It's a way of making you responsible for their emotional state. If you pull away because they're being inconsistent, they turn it back on you and make you the cold one or the abandoner.
It's crazy making. You're being mistreated, but you're the one being told you're the problem. And this can escalate into gaslighting over text. They deny things they clearly said 3 days ago, or they tell you you're overreacting to a 3-week silence.
If you find yourself scrolling back through the chat thread to prove what happened, you're already in a manipulative dynamic. A healthy person doesn't make you feel like you're losing your mind. They might disagree with your perspective, but they won't deny your reality.
I also noticed the term triangulation in the sources, using other people to make you feel insecure. Everyone thinks you're being too sensitive, or mentioning other people they're seeing just to spark jealousy and keep you competing for their attention.
It's about creating a sense of scarcity. If you think you're just one of many options, you might work harder to win. You'll be more understanding, more available, more chill. The breadcrumber uses the threat of other people, real or imagined, to keep you in a state of compliance.
It's so exhausting. And the hot and cold behavior, the intermittent reinforcement we keep coming back to, it actually creates a trauma bond. You become addicted to the highs because they're so rare. The relief you feel when they finally text you is so chemically intense that it feels like soulmate level connection.
But it's not a soulmate. It's withdrawal. You're not in love. You're just getting a fix. And until you realize that your brain is being hijacked by these variable rewards, it's almost impossible to break the cycle.
Okay, Miles, let's get into the how-to. How do we actually stop this? Because it's one thing to understand the psychology, but it's another to put the phone down and walk away. What's the first step in reclaiming our power?
The first step is naming the pattern to yourself. Stop making excuses for them. Stop saying they're busy and start saying they are breadcrumbing me. Use the word. It strips the romance off the behavior and reveals it for what it is, a low-effort control tactic.
I love that. Strip the romance. And then we have to stop rewarding the crumbs. If someone sends you a hey after 2 weeks of silence, you don't have to respond with a paragraph about your day. You can choose not to respond at all, or you can respond with the same level of effort they gave you.
I'd actually go a step further. If you want to know if it's breadcrumbing, require intention. When they send a vague, we should hang out, instead of saying, I'd love to, say, great, I'm free on Thursday at 7. Does that work for you? Force them to commit to a structure.
And watch what they do. If they backpedal or get vague again, you have your answer. You don't need to argue. You just need to believe the data. A person who wants to see you will say yes, or they will suggest an alternative time. A breadcrumber will dodge.
Exactly. And you have to budget your attention. Decide how much mental energy you're willing to give to someone who isn't giving it back. That might mean muting their notifications so you're not jumping every time your phone buzzes. It might mean deleting the thread so you're not tempted to reread old messages and edit the story.
I also think setting windows is huge. If you decide you don't respond to texts after 10 p.m., then don't. You're teaching people how to treat your time. If you're always on call, they'll treat you like an on-call option. If you have boundaries, you become a priority, or you become unavailable to them. Either way, you win.
And don't over-explain your boundaries. You're not a lawyer presenting a case. You're a person stating your needs. I'm looking for more consistency than this, is a complete sentence. If they react with anger or guilt-tripping, that's just more data that they're trying to control you.
It's about matching energy for real, not as a game. If they're giving you 10% effort, you give 10%. Don't try to earn their 100% by giving 110%. It doesn't work that way. In fact, giving more effort to a breadcrumber just tells them that their crumbs are enough to keep you around.
You're training them that you'll accept scraps. And the only way to retrain the dynamic, or end it, is to stop accepting anything less than the whole bakery. You deserve consistency. You deserve clarity. You deserve someone who is excited to show up for you, not someone who checks in when they're bored.
And while you're doing that, fill your life. Invest in your friends, your hobbies, your career. When your world is big and full, a breadcrumb feels tiny and insignificant. But when your world is empty, a breadcrumb looks like a lifeline.
That's a powerful shift. Make your world so big that their small effort doesn't even register on your radar.
So let's wrap this up with a playbook for our listeners. If they're looking at their phone right now and there's a breadcrumb sitting there, maybe a hey stranger or a thinking of you from someone who disappeared a month ago, what are the immediate steps?
Step 1. Pause. Don't react to the dopamine hit. Put the phone down for 10 minutes. Remind yourself of the pattern. Has this happened before? Did it lead to a date last time? Probably not.
Step 2. Assess the effort. Is this message personal? Does it ask a real question? Does it propose a plan? If it's just a hey or an emoji, it's a ping. It's an attention check. Treat it as such. You are not obligated to entertain someone's boredom.
Step 3. The intention test. If you do want to respond, do it with a call to action. Hey, if you're asking to make a plan, I'm free this weekend. If not, hope you're doing well. This forces them to either step up or fade out. It ends the gray zone immediately.
Step 4. The 2-message rule. If you suggest a plan and they dodge it twice, you're done. Stop initiating, stop checking in, delete the number if you have to. 2 vague responses is a clear no disguised as a maybe.
And step 5, protect your digital space. If seeing their active status or their story views is making you spiral, mute them.
You don't have to block them if that feels too dramatic, but out of sight, out of mind is a real psychological tool for healing. Stop being a spectator to their low-effort life.
I love the two-message rule. It gives you a clear line in the sand so you're not bargaining with yourself. Oh, maybe they just had a bad week. Maybe I'll try one more time. No. 2 strikes and you're out. It protects your dignity.
And remember, clarity is calm. If a relationship makes you feel chaotic, anxious, and hypervigilant, it's not because you're sensitive. It's because the connection is structurally unstable. A healthy connection feels like a settling of the nervous system.
That is such a good benchmark. Does this feel like a settling or a spike? If it's a spike, it's a crumb. If it's a settling, it's a meal. And you, listening right now, deserve the whole meal. You deserve the whole bakery.
You really do. And the moment you stop accepting crumbs is the moment you become available for someone who actually wants to build something real. You can't find the whole meal if your hands are full of crumbs.
That is the perfect takeaway. Let those crumbs go. They're not nourishing you. They're just keeping you hungry.
This has been such a deep dive, Miles. I think the biggest thing I'm taking away is that breadcrumbing isn't about us being not enough. It's about the other person not being ready or willing to offer a real connection. It's their limitation, not our lack of worth.
Exactly. It's a strategy that used to manage their own anxiety, their own ego, or their own fear of intimacy. When we stop taking it personally, we can stop performing for their attention. We can just see it for what it is, a mismatch of intentions.
And once you see the gears of the machine, the dopamine, the intermittent reinforcement, the desire for control, it loses its magic. It's not a mystery anymore. It's just a pattern, and patterns can be broken.
They really can. It starts with one no, one choice to not respond, one choice to prioritize your own peace over their ping.
I want to encourage everyone listening to take a look at their phone today. Is there someone in your life who is managing you? Someone who gives you just enough to stay, but never enough to feel safe? What would it feel like to just stop waiting for them?
It feels like freedom. It might feel lonely for a minute, but it's a clean loneliness. It's way better than the anxious loneliness of waiting for a text that might never come.
Clean loneliness. I love that. It's the space where you can actually start to heal.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We really hope this helps you navigate those gray zones with a bit more clarity and a lot more self-respect.
Yeah. Take some time to reflect on which of these patterns resonated with you. Maybe write down your own line in the sand standard. You're worth the effort of a real plan, every single time. Thanks for listening.